Good to have you 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Hope you had a wonderful weekend because, well, a lot of folks in Atlanta did. Maybe not so much late Sunday and into this morning if you're a Falcons fan, but Hawks with a big weekend. Braves took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. And, of course, the late news on Sunday of the Julio Jones potential trade with the Titans has now come to fruition. Atlanta gets a second-round pick in 2022's draft and a fourth-round pick in the 2023 draft. But maybe the most important thing, and I guess if you're a Falcons fan, you need to understand about all this, is that the Titans took the money, and that's what Atlanta was all about. I mean, the Tennessee Titans are taking on the entirety of what's left of the Julio Jones contract, which in 2021 is $15 million. And that's cap money that the Falcons don't have to deal with and can use it on free agents, on draft picks, etc. Ben, I know we like to do this. I know you hate player comparisons probably as much as who won the trade the day of. But, I mean, the fact that the Falcons got rid of all that money and the Titans were willing to take that on, regardless of what you think of where the draft picks are, that's got to be a win for Atlanta.
It is. I mean, because the whole thing about it is this. Number one, Julio went to a playoff contender. Check, that's what he wanted. Number two, he's not in the NFC. Check again. And number three, nobody was getting signed in your rookie class as long as Julio Jones was on the Atlanta Falcons. I think what happens is, the BJ, something me and you were talking about, people always look at what you got back, right? Well, outside of Jalen Ramsey and Jamal Adams, when the last time a position player not named a quarterback warranted a first-round pick? It's hard to get a first-round pick for a player. But Julio was done right by an organization that he has more than done right by when you talk about the Atlanta Falcons. But two, people weren't willing to give up it wasn't the first-round picks. People like, we don't want to pay that $15 million. Because while we know who Julio is, the league know who he is, he still costs $15 million. That's quarterback money for a guy that's in his early 30s. So I think that, number one, I thought it was going to be the Titans all along because you got to give Mike Vrabel a lot of credit. I mean, he didn't just learn under Bill Belichick. He understands how to go out there and go for it. Number two, Julio is a guy that doesn't make any waves. Outside of him being on the phone with Shannon Sharp, do you hear anything about Julio at all? He don't ever talk at all. And number three, BJ, this ain't about what Atlanta did not get. This is about Atlanta getting rid of the money. They had to get rid of the $15 million. And as soon as I don't even know who the general manager is for the Titans, but when he said we'll take the money, he's on the plane right now. We will get him a plane ticket to get to Nashville. And the one thing I can say about Julio is this: same as me, I'm not comparing myself to Julio as a player. Never had to leave the South, right? From Alabama, went to Alabama, drafted by Atlanta. Now he's going to Nashville. That's got to say a lot because he had to uproot his family to go 3.5 hours up the road compared to having to move cross country, have to deal with a different climate. So I'm happy for Julio because at the end of the day, he still get his money. He still get to compete. But I'm even happier for them Falcons because the reason why you ain't heard a lot from Kyle Pitts outside of OTAs because he ain't got 1 cent from the Falcons yet. But now you're going to see them guys start coming off the board, being able to sign their full draft class.
Yeah, it's interesting, guys, because for the longest time, right, for kind of the duration of the rumor mill, you heard Atlanta wants a first-round pick. Atlanta wants a first-round pick. And I think when you were thinking about it like that, to see the bottom line, to see the ticker and think, oh, okay, they got a second and a fourth and had to give a sixth back, maybe you feel a little underwhelmed. But when you heard the initial reports of a first-round pick, you didn't kind of go into the detail and the nuance behind that, which was Atlanta needed desperately to get all the money off the books first and foremost. And I think there were opportunities potentially to pursue a trade that might have come with a first-round pick, but how would that have affected the money on the books? That's a different question. So I do agree with you, Ben. Even if at first glance you go, oh, wow, I was anticipating a first-round pick. Well, that might have been unrealistic to begin with. You pointed kind of the history of first-round picks. Unless you're a superstar player in your early to mid-20s, only quarterbacks get first-round returns. But you get a second-round pick. Ben, your Titans are going to be really good, so that's probably going to be, what, in the 50 to 60 range, somewhere in there. but you did what you had to do cap space wise. Now you can sign your rookies. Now you can move forward in 2021. But a lot of emotion, guys. I mean, Julio Jones is a legend, one of the great players in Atlanta sports history, one of the great Falcons of all time. I know people are sad to see him go. You appreciate, have great respect for what he did, what he meant to the organization. And, if you're Atlanta, it's going to be impossible to replace him. You don't replace Julio Jones, but can you move forward and be productive without him? That's the question. And then, Ben, for your Titans, man, I'm surprised you didn't have the Titans shirt today because, look, Tennessee got one of the best players in the league.
No, the thing about this, BJ, I mean, what happened with Julio doesn't really happen, right? Like the term doing right by in sports, that doesn't usually happen. You did right by Julio because you drafted him and you gave him way more money than you probably should. That's why he's out the door now. Julio more than lived up to the contract. I think, and to show you what the Titans are getting, Derek Mason has the most receiving yards in one season by a Tennessee Titan. I think it was in 2004 when I was there with him my rookie year. I think he had 1,303 yards. That is the most. Julio has done that 6 times. So what I'm saying is when you start talking about doing right by a player, off the blank, when the last time a player left a team not named Tom Brady, not named Peyton Manning, that the owner comes out and thanks him? It doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's hard to make that big of an impact on an NFL franchise, and Julio has done it. Now, Matty Ice ain't like it, but this is the thing. The draft you should just look at it as the replacement. They are drafting your replacement every single year. Julio just, you know how I know who was Roddy White's replacement? Julio. That's why Roddy White can move on, right? Well, who was Julio's replacement? Ridley. That's why Julio can move. They do it every single year. So I just think that, yes, BJ, when you start talking about bully receivers, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones going to have these defensive coordinators up at night because you still got to deal with that monster named Derrick Henry. But I think all in all, everybody won. People looking at what you got. Do we really remember first-round picks? No. We really, really don't. Unless they are top 10 or they pan out. I'm just saying. I mean, first-round picks, they don't make it no different than second through seventh-round picks. We just, they got 2 first-rounders. Who were they? Don't remember. Can't remember. So I just think that when you look at the fact that Julio gets to move on to a team that wants him, but bigger than that, Terry Fontenot can say, did they get the money? Yeah, the money is, but we don't got to worry about that because Kyle Pitts, none of those guys was gonna get picked up because BJ, they love Julio, but they love Kyle Pitts, and Kyle Pitts ain't even played yet.
Yeah, I look at it and say, look, this was a move that had to be done. I mean, maybe say it didn't have to be. You could restructure somebody else, a Grady Jarrett or somebody, but this was going to happen. And by and large, hey, you got him out of the NFC. He's not in your division. And most importantly, you had somebody to take the money. And again, you hate to say, I know fans take that wrong whenever deals are done solely for money, but it's a business. And if it was just about, hey, we love Julio, well, then this would have never even come up for discussion, right? It would just be like, it's fine. We paid you maybe more than we should have, but whatever. It is what, no, they had to clear up room. That was the easiest way to do it. And they found a partner who was willing to take on the salary in the Tennessee Titans. So to me, the move makes sense. Now, we can argue till the cows come home. Did you get enough? I mean, we'll only know that in hindsight, how it plays out. If Julio goes to Tennessee and has a hamstring problem or, some of the minor stuff that popped up while he was in Atlanta and plays 12 of 17 games or something like that, maybe you say Atlanta. But as Ben said, you're not going to know 5 years from now, hey, remember when the Falcons traded Julio and just now we got us a cornerback out of Rice who was really good. No, that's not necessarily how that works. So I think they got the value they could get. First round pick was not going to come without strings, which means you can move him. You get a first round pick, but you're eating some of that money. This is the best you could get for Julio Jones and not have to pay any more of his contract. So from that standpoint alone, if I'm Terry Fontenot, you have to count that as a win. And what's probably considered the first kind of big decision as a GM. I mean, drafting, that's a big decision. Now you're getting into personnel moves and money stuff. That is a huge decision because you just let a franchise player walk in a trade because you couldn't afford him. And you had to make that decision as opposed to getting creative with the numbers. So I think good move for Atlanta there all things said and done. We'll hear from D. Orlando Ledbetter, AJC.com coming up in just a little bit. We'll talk about the Braves and the Dodgers coming up in a little bit as well. But the Hawks, guys, also a big weekend. The little engine that could keeps right on going. Get through the Knicks. Oh, it's Philly. Well, maybe if Joel Embiid doesn't play, the Hawks have a better chance. Well, Joel Embiid played, and the Hawks, I mean, the final score looked very, very close, 4 points, but they were up as many as 26 in this ball game with Joel Embiid out there.
Yeah, had a massive lead early, and this is a team that believes. I mean, Ben, you've said that for a couple of weeks now. That when you watch them play, you can kind of get a sense for the confidence, and it starts with Trae Young. What more can you say? After making history in the Garden and started early in the series with the game winner, and then finished obviously playing great. He goes to Philly and drops 35 with 10 dimes. I mean, absolutely amazing, and you're not seeing his production take away from the overall efficiency of the offense. It's not like it's Trae forcing shots or it's Trae having to go for 30 or 35. It's a part of the rhythm of the team, and it's a very fluid squad. You continue to see great play defensively. Just really proud of the effort defensively on the glass. I mean, Ben, look, I'd be lying if I'm sitting here saying what Christian walks in. No, but Christian, I'm talking about Christian comes in and says they gave up 120 points. I understand that. I'm talking to you and the screen, but you're talking about early in the game, you're setting a tone. Who do I look at, the screen or you? You're setting a physical tone. You're rebounding. And keep in mind, a lot of those points came with Atlanta having a 15, 20-point lead late in the third quarter. So I don't know that the defensive intensity was a necessity when you're up 20 points. I think you still, in the moments that mattered early in the game, set a defensive tone, and it was kind of like what you see in football games sometimes when you have a 17, 21-point lead and a team scores a couple of baskets late. For the most part in that game, Atlanta was very good defensively, and I think that's been a measure and a metric that has been consistent. There have been a couple. Offensive balance, Trae Young setting the tone, and even though it got, to Christian's point, it got a little scary late for the vast majority of that game. All right, I'm going to bring up the quarter scoring for the vast majority of that game. When the defining moments were being kind of put into play, Atlanta was really good defensively. Now down the stretch, yes, but this is a team that is winning with defense, offensive balance, and Trae Young setting the tone.
Ben, I'm sorry, I got to hop in here before you go. You were up 2 with 8 seconds left in the game after being up 26 points early and up 20 at halftime. You were up 2 points with 8 seconds left in the game, and you're saying it got a little close? We're doing football comparisons. It's basically like saying you were up 2 points and the other team had the football with time enough to get down the field and try to kick a field goal. It was horrifying. There was nothing great about the defense. They got outscored.
No, they had it. No, look, this is what I'm saying.
First quarter.
Atlanta in the first 3 quarters gave up 27 points, and 29 points. If you hold an NBA team in the playoffs to less than 30 points in a quarter, that's really good. And then when you had a 20-point lead, you got out of sync a little bit in the final period. But do I think Atlanta for the vast majority of that game was good defensively? Yes. And down the stretch, I don't think teams play the same defensively when they're nursing a 5-point lead compared to a 20-point lead. But I think Atlanta, for the most part, was very good defensively in that game, and that was enough for them to win.
I think you saw Philly come out really, really cold, turning the ball over. But what you saw the last 3 quarters was what Philly can do, and it looked the last 3 quarters like Philly was a much better team.
The last 3 quarters, dude, what they scored 27 in the second quarter and 29 in the third quarter.
Again, after the first quarter, the Hawks got outscored by 16 points.
Well, they also scored 42 in the first period. Yeah.
I just think at the end of the day, one team is embracing the pressure while the other team is feeling it. I mean, because we keep on. Which team got the most playoff experience? Oh, that would be Philly. Which team got the MVP candidate? That would be Philly. Which team came out with that L? That would also be Philly. Trigger Trae, go keep doing what you're doing. I mean, 35 and 10. That's I'm just saying, when you look at what he does bring to the table, no one's gonna ever think that. Trae Young, his last name is Young, not Wallace, as in Ben Wallace It's fine. They got the dub. Move on to game 2. Because right now, if they was feeling the pressure in game 1, Ben Simmons, all NBA first team defense. How did he look when he was on Trick or Treat? Oh, that's right. He was scared to be on Trick or Treat.
We've got more to come, and we'll see what the Hawks do on in a couple of days or a day here when they come back in game number 2. I think the pressure's on Philly again. Even if, despite the comeback, try not to go in an 0-2 hole to start this series. We'll come back. We're talking Falcons. Julio out the door. D. Orlando Ledbetter. AJC.com will join us. We'll break down all the details of that trade when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Of course, the big news of the day, Julio Jones gone from the Atlanta Falcons, traded to the Tennessee Titans. And joining us here on the program to talk all about that from the AJC.com, D. Orlando Ledbetter joins us. Daryl, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on 3 and Out again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hey, we are glad to have you. And obviously, we've talked to you several times about the possibility of this happening, and it was going to be a matter of time. In the end, was it all just, hey, the Falcons found the Titans were willing to take all the money on, and that was that?
Yeah, no question about it. They shopped it for 6 weeks, slow rolled it right before the draft just to kind of get their hands around what the marketplace was going to be like. And at the end of the day, it was time to make that move. They didn't want Julio's, immense figure hanging over the mandatory minicamp coming up this week. So they took the best offer they had on the table from the Tennessee Titans.
A lot of talk leading up to this that Atlanta was going to get a first-round pick. Was that ever close to being a possibility? I know they got a second-round pick and a fourth, and the money obviously moving to Tennessee, but were there internal expectations of a first-round pick?
Yeah, there were initially, but nobody ever offered one. So, there was one report by Diana Rossini that they had a first-round pick on the table, and that was never the case. So I don't know if they used her or somebody leaked her some information to try to create a market when there wasn't one there. So, not that kind of stuff happens, but it can. There was no big market for Julio. He's 32, got the big contract. That was a little bit stunning given what Stafford was able to get, what the Lions were able to get for Stafford. That was a quarterback, though. But, I was stunned when I found out what the marketplace was going to be like for Julio. I was second and third was what we were hearing from the beginning.
And dear Orlando, how much of that, you talk about them shopping him for 6 weeks. Obviously, they got to be able to report back to him, I'm guessing, when they reaching out to teams. But it had to be shocking to Julio because obviously the national narrative when it comes to Julio, top 2, maybe 3 or 4 receiver in the league, but 32 years old with a $15 million price tag in 2021 had to, make a lot of teams kind of walk away from the table.
Yeah, no question about it. Seattle and New England didn't want to pay that kind of money. It made sense for Tennessee because they were going to have to pay that for Corey Davis. And basically, they took Corey Davis's money, let him go, and said, we'll give that to Julio. A young Corey Davis is not as good as the old Julio Jones in their mind. So the money makes sense for them. It's got to make sense for you when you're doing that. San Francisco couldn't do it. The Rams tried, they talked to all the NFC West teams, but Tennessee came up with the second round and fourth round pick, and that was, the best deal that they can get for Julio Jones.
The Orlando Ledbetter joining us here on 3 and Out. And Daryl, I know you had said the new coaching staff, the new regime was kind of shocked at how much time Julio missed last year. Is that one of those things where could they have restructured if they wanted to keep him, or are they looking at like, hey, this is a guy that's aging, missed a lot of time just during the week last year and in recent seasons, and maybe we just need to go a new direction anyways?
Yeah, no, they could have done other things. This wasn't the only way to get under the cap. That was brought to my attention by people that knew how their books work. So it was they never came to a meeting of the minds. When you came in, you tried to meet with all the players. You try to share your vision and expectation. And Julio, having been here through the last 3 years, like, okay, that's probably not going to work. And so he decided that he wanted to go to a team with a chance to win now in his last couple of years. He's got to be looking at it like that. And, you got to remember, Julio was brought in under Roddy White. And he saw how Roddy White's situation ended with the team. And he probably wanted no parts of that.
So talk about Julio's legacy. I mean, obviously one of the greatest players in the history of the franchise, Daryl, but you've covered him as close as anybody. What did he mean to the organization?
Oh, he was, he pushed them over the top. You got to remember when he comes in, the Falcons had gotten to, the playoffs as the number 1 seed, got into a shootout with Green Bay and couldn't keep up, and so they had to rev up the offense. So they traded all the picks, got Julio, got right back into the playoffs, then got in a championship game his second year, got to the Super Bowl in his 6th year. Twice they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion, to the Giants, and then to the Eagles with Julio on the roster. And then, of course, we know what happened in the Super Bowl. So he made the Falcons championship contenders with all their other weapons that they had. And but for the offensive line failed rebuild, they still be probably in the playoff mix. But, the line failed. They can't block anybody right now, and they can't rush the passer, and Julio wants out. And so that's how it ended here for him. But during his tenure, the Falcons were in the mix. You got Tony Gonzalez, Roddy there early. They were pick your poison. Even Michael Turner's last year was with Julio. So then they move on and, get to the AFC Championship game. They got that lead. They're up 17 and can't close that game. So, some of the great Falcons, I think he balled out in the San Francisco game. Thought he had like 13 for 182. So, one of the great performers on a big stage in the big games and, legitimized the Falcons and pushed them over the top into, NFC title contenders.
And Orlando, when you look at the fact that a guy like Terry Fontenot, who obviously, you see what he did over there in New Orleans, a lot of times people think, why do you get the right general manager? People like, you got to get the right general manager to make hard decisions. I think you get a guy like Terry Fontenot to just make business decisions because he knew, look, we're not going to be able to keep Julio. I've seen it all, done it all. When you talk about what he's done, how much of having him in the front office make these type of decisions, not easy to make, but he can make them because he's almost seen it all in his a still very, a young career as a GM.
Yeah, no question about it. He's been at it for a long time, 19 years. That you hired to make some of these tough decisions. If I'm coming in, I'm trying to keep all the good players I got. I'm not trying to be trading them. But, if folks don't want to be here, you're going on TV talking stuff about the team, basically calling them losers, then, you really can't come back in that locker room without a full apology and so forth. So it was just a messy situation. They inherited, some of this started back, with the contract when Matt Ryan got his $150 million contract, and Julio keeps going back every year asking for more money. And, just follow the dollars on some of these things and you can get to what the root of the problem is.
Orlando Ledbetter joining us here. You mentioned minicamp coming up this week. What are the Falcons looking to get done there?
Well, this whole off season is dedicated to getting Kyle Pitts ready to go now. He's going to have to pick up some of the slack in the passing game. And Kyle's looked great at the OTAs and so forth. So they're just trying to learn their formations, learn their schemes, so when they can they can go to camp in July and hit the ground running. But, what we've been able to see through 4 practices, the 2 rookie mini camps and 2 open OTAs is he's learning. He's a reflective guy, kind of runs off to the side. You can see him trying to think through some of the things they're trying to do. And we've seen him doing a lot of stuff early. It was all simple outs and stuff like that. But then, lately we've seen a little bit of motion and some down the field stuff with him. So that's what this whole offseason is about, getting Kyle Pitts ready and, getting that offensive line in shape because you can't keep letting Matt Ryan get sacked 40 times, and hit 80 and hurried another 70-something times. So those are the 2 things that they got to do. And, we always been looking for the pass rush here, so that's ongoing. Decade-long search is still going on there. So those are the 3 priorities for them here in the mandatory minicamp.
A lot of talk about Kyle Pitts, and understandably, but with Calvin Ridley, has he already proven that he is a number 1 receiver after 1,300 yards last year, and is he ready to be, I guess, the go-to guy? We'll see what Pitts can do, but with Julio now gone.
Oh, certainly. I do believe Ridley's fine for that role. Last season showed that he could still get the numbers, even without Julio on being on the other side. So, it's going to be tougher, but I'm just working through that story now. And say, what does the offense look like without Julio? And that's mostly Kyle Pitts and Ridley engaged. And I'm not even figuring in the other tight ends yet. But behind those two, you don't really have much. You got the Tajay Sharp kid that's coming over from the Vikings. He had a 41 catch year in Tennessee. And then you got the Darby kid they drafted. But yeah, it's you don't just trade a 7-time Pro Bowler and replace it right away. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
And there, you mentioned how Julio was a guy that saw what happened to Roddy White at the end of his career. He wanted no part of that, but didn't Julio kind of do for really what Roddy White did for him? I mean, obviously Julio ended up replacing Roddy. Now, really is essentially replacing Julio as the number one. So when you look at both of those guys' legacy, both Roddy and Julio, even though they two are the greatest to ever do it, with the Falcons, both of those guys didn't mind passing the torch to the next man.
Well, yeah, no question about it. You could probably go back and thank Falcons wide receiver coach Terry Labisky for, coaching Roddy and getting him straight, and then, having Roddy share that information with Julio, and then Julio's done the exact same thing with Ridley. So football-wise, they've passed the torch that way. But I was more speaking about Roddy getting cut while on vacation at the end of his career, and that didn't sit well with some of his teammates.
Orlando Ledbetter, our guest here on 3 and Out. Daryl, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Take care. Have a great evening.
Will do. Orlando Ledbetter joining us as Julio Jones off to the Tennessee Titans. Falcons get a second-round pick in 2022, a fourth-round pick in 2023, and send a sixth-rounder back to Tennessee, I believe in 2023 as well. Tennessee takes on the remainder of the Julio Jones contract, which includes, of course, the $15 million here in 2021.
And Ben, you made a point earlier in the show about draft value, and I know for some people we had been, getting accustomed to the idea of a first-round return. But even if you're talking about this second-round pick being in the 50 to 60 range, you're still talking about really highly touted prospects. I go back to the 2020 NFL draft. You had Trevon Diggs, Cam Akers, Jalen Hurts, AJ Epineza, J.K. Dobbins, Raekwon Davis, Van Jefferson. These guys were in the 50s. You go back to last year, you're talking about Azeez Ojulari, Sam Cosmi, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, you're talking about big-time players that are still on the board in that 50 to 60 range when you look at a traditional second round.
Well, the thing about it is, BJ, there's nothing traditional about, think about this. You're talking about top 60 and top 90 picks. So think about every prospect coming out. These are NFL ready players. You was a top 60, top 90. I think that player is ready to become a starter or even compete for a starter. When I got drafted, the first thing Jeff Fisher told me is you need to be ready to compete for a starting job. He ain't saying I was gonna win it, but we looking at you as a potential starter. If you are a top 60, definitely maybe even a top 90 pick, you looking upon to be a starter. The best players in the NFL do not get drafted in the first round.
All right, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Thanks again to Orlando Ledbetter. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Monday. Huge weekend in the ATL with Julio Jones being traded to the Tennessee Titans. That happened officially today, but a lot of speculation came out yesterday. The Hawks getting a Game 1 win over the 76ers on Sunday, and the Braves, after Friday night's debacle, actually taking 2 of 3 from the Dodgers and beating Kershaw and Trevor Bauer. I mean, they are 3-0 this season against Bauer, Kershaw, and Corey Kluber. 3-1 against former Cy Young winners. So apparently they just need to play good teams and they play better, I guess. I don't know what the deal is, but a big series for the Braves this past weekend, taking 2 of 3 from the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I don't know that any of us expected that. I know you said, Kev, hey, if you grab one, that's something you can deal with. But really impressed with the pitching on Saturday and Sunday, and even Ian Anderson on Friday. It was just a weird game. I mean, a lot of walks and the errors, and you didn't give up a ton of hits. You had a lot of swing and miss type stuff from the Braves pitchers. But look, Saturday you had Charlie Morton give you 5, only give up 2. That's a quality start. And more importantly than that, perhaps, you had the bullpen come in for 4 innings and give up just 1 hit and no runs. So if we're going to criticize the bullpen, they were great on Saturday, and that was a big reason why the Braves won. And then on Sunday, Max Fried looked the part, 6 innings pitched, got you to the 7th, gave up just 1 earned run. So pitching, I mean, this team does what it does based on the performances of the pitchers. And the starters the last couple of weeks have been really good. The bullpen, I mean, Kevin, I'll give them credit this weekend. They came around. So I did not expect 2 out of 3, especially wins on Saturday and Sunday. So that was an impressive weekend for Atlanta.
Well, of course it was. And the whole thing about it is I keep going back to something Kevin said. What do we learn from the Braves if they win the series? They did it against 2 really, really good pitchers. That's what you learn. No one says that the Braves are better than the Dodgers because I don't know if anybody is better than the Dodgers, but this Braves team is still living up to the persona of when they go up against really, really good pitchers, they tend to play better, Kevin, and I will take it because thank God they was able to bounce back. Because if you were going by the first game, you would be like, oh, it's going to be an 0-3 series. Here it is. But 2 out of 3 against Bauer, Clayton Kershaw. Kevin, like I said, you said something about Bauer and Kershaw. I think Ian Anderson, those guys are realizing the longer you can do it, the more benefit of doubt you get when you are being consistent at it. But hey, BJ, they won the series against the Dodgers. We'll see if that's momentum to push them, in their next series. But you'll take it. For one weekend, the Braves won 2 out of 3 against arguably the best team top to bottom in the bigs.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with those results. And I think you saw the Braves kind of play some of their better baseball. They got some clutch hits Saturday and Sunday. Friday night, you really thought it was set up to be a disaster of a weekend, BJ, because it looked like more of the same. But you look at a team that found a way to get through. Luke Jackson's pitching really well. AJ Minter came back, had a good weekend. Will Smith was, he was Will Smith. He still gave up a run on yesterday. And you're adding Shane Green into the mix, who got called up on Sunday, did not pitch. And I thought, maybe Brian Snitker not wanting to call him up and say, hey, your first appearance is going to be in the 9th inning with a 2-run lead against, one of the best lineups in baseball. Go get him. And maybe that was part of the thought. But he adding into the back end of that bullpen should help to shorten games, where I think it's another high-quality arm where you get late in the game and it's not just, it's going to be Matzik and then it's going to be Will Smith and that's it. Or it's going to be A.J. Minter. I think now you can start if your starter goes 6th, heaven forbid they get into the 7th, then you start looking at it and say, I can come at him with Shane Green, or I can come at him with Will Smith or Minter or Matzik. And it's not just, hey, I need you guys to go cover 4 innings tonight and get us to the finish line. So I think it gives you options of things to do late in the ball game, which should help this team finish if they are ahead in the ball game.
No, I agree. And Green's going to help. Atlanta's in an interesting spot. And I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on this because you just had a great weekend. You really did. I mean, that's borderline historic to beat Kershaw and Bauer in back-to-back games. And even Friday, your starting pitching was pretty good. It was just a really weird game. And then it just got crazy. But what's interesting to me is you had a great weekend, a statement weekend, and you're still 3.5 games back in the East. And the only reason I bring that up is because I know sometimes you guys like to get on me, and I understand it about I overreact early. But the reason when the Braves have had what 2 4-game losing streaks already this season, the reason those sting so much is because they take some of the energy and momentum out of great weekends like this. Because now when Atlanta evaluates itself, and I think the Braves are potentially a playoff team. They are the defending division champs, 3 years running. They should feel like they're the team to beat. But when you get 3-4 games back, I think we sometimes rationalize in our minds that being an easier obstacle to overcome than it is, because you don't control your own destiny, as this weekend proved. You had a great weekend against the Dodgers, but the Mets had a great weekend against the Padres. And because of that, you're still 3.5 games back. So it was a great weekend. I think Atlanta should be confident. You have Boston coming up, Philly coming up, St. Louis coming up, some other chances to make a national statement. But I also think when you see performances like Saturday and Sunday, it really makes me think about the missed opportunities from earlier in the year. 0 for 6 against the Blue Jays, losing 3 of 4 to Miami. And I understand that's part of it in baseball, but I think what we saw Saturday and Sunday, hopefully, is the Braves team we're going to see moving forward.
I mean, but the whole thing about it is, BJ, isn't that baseball what you're saying? I mean, yes, it's like the great thing about it is as good as you've done over the weekend, you still can't get complacent, pat yourself on the back because you're always moving forward. 3.5 games of baseball, I get it. I mean, you don't want to, like I said, you don't want 3.5 to turn to 4 and 5 and maybe 6.5 because you spend the whole season chasing the guys in your division. But you knew how tough the NL East was going to be. And the Braves, just like every other team, was still trying to find their stride. I know it takes a minute in baseball, but when you can do what you did against the Dodgers, it proves that you're a confident bunch that can still go out there and get it done in all 3 phases, especially with that bullpen. But as long as you just keep pace, and like I said, the Kevin Thomas rule, pre-All-Star game, post-All-Star game, because something I heard Kevin say, you want to make sure that stamina is up post All-Star game, because at that point you count healthy bodies and you're trying not to run out of gas.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be an interesting year for that, especially for everybody involved, because if you could say, well, was there a benefit to playing the season last year? I mean, the Braves made it through several rounds of the playoffs and pushed 70 some odd games last year, counting the postseason, where most teams played 60. So I've always been one, hey, put yourself in a position by the All-Star break. All-Star break is where you start to make your push. You have the trade deadline and things of that nature. And this year you're getting into that 162 games where you're playing 100 more games that a lot of these guys did not play last year. You played 60 and went home and didn't have that daily grind of playing 162 games. You didn't have full minor league seasons. You had an alternate site. There's a lot of guys who are ramping up to finish what's going to be a marathon of a season. I'm interested to see. Take a snapshot of what it looks like at the All-Star break and then look at it on the last day of the season and see how many teams absolutely ran out of gas coming down the stretch. I think those numbers could be very, very interesting to follow as we work through the season. We got much more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll talk some Braves baseball with Gaurav Vidak coming up next hour as well. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out. BJ Ben, and I'm Kevin Thomas. BJ, I'll give you a minute here before we run out of time. Apparently, Team USA was playing and had a little bit of everything. And I know we've talked about fan behavior in the NBA, but apparently that got out of control with USA and Mexico. What was that yesterday?
Yes, you had a game last night, the CONCACAF Nations League final, and it was a very dramatic game. Team USA defeated Mexico 3-2 in a game where the U.S. got a late penalty kick, and then the backup goalkeeper for Team USA blocked a late penalty kick. But yeah, it was just a crazy game. You had stuff thrown from the stands. You had fights. The game was stopped for a derogatory chants. I believe homophobic chants from the crowd, so which was very disappointing and unacceptable. But yeah, you're talking about a game that was all over the place. Ended up playing not only the 90 minutes of regulation, but basically 2 additional 15-minute periods. So all over the place. In the end, Christian Pulisic gets the game-winning penalty kick for Team USA, and they win the CONCACAF Nations League final over Mexico in a very compelling game, 3-2 for Team USA.
So what does that mean?
I know you watched it. It means you won the trophy. You won the CONCACAF Nations League. You beat your arch rival, a very good Mexico team. It's a big momentum builder.
All right. Glad you were fired up about that.
Y'all didn't watch?
My cable went out. I was getting ready to turn it on, and it just went out.
I'll be honest, until you said, hey, I want to talk about the soccer on the show, I didn't even know that they were playing. So
Soccer.
Cody said he was watching a guy who makes YouTube videos try to play box a guy who really boxes. So then we'll get into that coming up a little bit later in the show as well. But so much more to get to. We'll talk some more Braves. Go at VDOC in hour number 2. We'll let Ben wrap up the weekend and look at some college football as well. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live ESPNCoastal.com. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hour number 2. We'll get to Ben's weekend wrap up coming up here in about 15 minutes. Also, Gorav Vidak, Talking Chop, will join us. We'll look at the Braves weekend series against the LA Dodgers and get the very latest of what's going on there with Atlanta as they get ready for a 3-gamer versus the Philadelphia Phillies coming up here midweek. But a lot to look ahead to with college football. I know preseason mags are out. We talked a lot about looking ahead at replacing talent, running backs in the SEC, though, BJ, where are we standing here? That was obviously been a marquee position for a number of years. And where does it stand here in 2021, where we are starting to see a little bit of the, I shouldn't say resurgence, but emergence of a deeper pool of quarterback across the league as well?
Yeah, and I think you're going to have some new names, new running backs step up, but there still are returning guys who are stars, and we've talked about this a couple of times, but right out of Bradwell Institute, Kevin Harris up at South Carolina is a star, and only 10 games last year, but had over 1,100 yards rushing, had 15 rushing touchdowns, over 6.1 yards per carry, so a fantastic season. And what's interesting, Najee Harris actually led the league in yards total, but Kevin Harris, not Najee Harris, led the league in yards per game. He had 113.8 yards per game, and he's a guy that runs with great balance and vision, is quick and fast, but is also strong and sturdy, a real well-rounded back. And you look at some of his games last year, Ben, I mean, 243 yards and 5 touchdowns against Ole Miss. Went for 100 yards against your Gators. Went for 126 yards and 2 scores against LSU. Went for 210 yards against Kentucky. So this guy's a star. And yes, you're going to have big-time production out of Alabama. Obviously, Georgia has 2-3 running backs that could start for anybody in the country. Jerrion Ealy at Ole Miss, really good. Isaiah Spiller at Texas A&M, really good. You have some great running backs in this league. Tank Bigsby might be the next superstar in college football out of Auburn. But Kevin Harris was incredible last year and probably isn't getting enough attention around the country.
Yeah, BJ, I mean, a lot of times, too, Kevin Harris is still a relative unknown, not because of who he is, but where he played, right? When you look at what his production was, I mean, and let's face it, he did against all SEC competition. That's got to mean something in 10 games. You talk about BJ, a guy like Tank Bigsby, he's going to benefit from Kevin Harris because why? He gets Mike Bobo going from South Carolina over to Auburn. I mean, Isaiah Spiller, I think he's coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard receivers. 1,000-yard season. I'm sorry. I mean, a guy that most people are not going to know, Mr. Chris Rodriguez out of University of Kentucky. Pro Football Focus had him the number 2 ranked, highest rated running back, and Zamir White, and I mean, you got some McKenzie, all these guys, Milton, all these different guys, James Cook. BJ, 2020, right? We can simply say it was a year to pass catcher. A pass catcher won the Heisman. You saw what Kyle Pitts did. You saw what Elijah Moore did. Could 2021 get back to what we used to SEC be? And could it be the year? I know we're not talking about the draft, but could it be return of the back? I wish we had return of the Mac to just queue up. But offenses are always better when it's ran by the running game first because it keeps everything balanced. Could we be getting back to more balanced offenses this year? Now we're not getting away from the spread. I'm not saying calm down, Twitter feed. Ben don't know what he's talking about. I'm just saying when you can run the football, it opens up for the pass. I mean, obviously you look at some of these guys, Spiller and Harris, and Bigsby and Rodriguez and White, but could 2021 get back to what we know in the SEC to be that ground and pound with the addition of the spread?
Well, I think that's always the case, Kevin. I mean, even Alabama, for as much as people look at what they've done the last couple of years, and of course, Tua and Mac and these passing games are amazing, but Najee Harris had almost 1,500 yards. Well, I want to double check it. Didn't he have, 26 rushing touchdowns a year ago? Absurd. And at Alabama, you're probably going to have some combo of Brian Robinson and Jace McClellan. McClellan's very interesting. He averaged over 10 yards per carry last year. And then Brian Robinson is a guy that had almost 500 yards. So, yes, even when you have a spread attack, and I think you'll see this at Georgia, whether it's Zamir White or whoever else, even when you are a dynamic passing attack, you still have to be able to run the football. And look at the teams, Kevin, that have won national championships. Alabama, the backs, speak for themselves. Ohio State, making a run to the championship. Ezekiel Elliott, and you're talking about Trey Sermon. Clemson, obviously, you're talking about Travis Etienne, one of the best of all time. So you got to have the backs in there, and I think the SEC even if on paper right now you don't have superstars, I think by the end of the year you're going to have more than people think.
Again, I think it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic of running back, because as you said, the SEC has long been known as running back. And even in this age, as you said, of throwing the football, where everybody's in love with that and having quarterbacks that can run and throw, the running backs in the SEC still a premium position. And in some cases, if you got 2 or 3 of them, but still a premium position in the SEC, despite you look around college football in leagues like the Pac-12 and the Big 12, who have gone much more to the throwing game, you kind of don't see the standouts there as much across the league. It's, Oklahoma State has, had Chuba Hubbard. Outside of that, maybe one other school had like just a big time feature running back. That's not the case in the SEC right now.
I mean, and the thing is too, BJ, something that these backs are doing now, right? They showing that, look, I can be the feature back running the football. I can also catch the ball out the backfield, which makes them even more dangerous because, we go back to Edwards-Helaire, right? People talk about the 1,500 yards. Didn't he have like 50 catches also in that 2019 season? So people go, the more you can do. Well, coach, are you a 3-down back? Check. Can you pick up the blitz? Check. Can you run between the tackles? Check. Are you a home run hitter? Check. And can you catch the ball? Check. Well, then you don't need 2 or 3 backs to do that if one guy can do it. But I think now in the age now, BJ, of sharing the wealth, I mean, Isaiah Spiller coming off back-to-back seasons, what Kevin Harris did last year, I mean, these guys are going to, you get them some help around them because Texas A&M is expected to do a lot. Isaiah Spiller going to have a lot to do with that. Kevin Harris, I mean, he did. He was a part of the walking wounded last year, or who was left. But yeah, I always like it because it's easy to talk about led by Tank Bigsby, led by Isaiah Spiller, and the Aggies compared to all these quarterbacks getting all the love. I mean, quarterbacks don't run the rock unless they dual threat quarterbacks. Let these running backs go out there and make it happen again. Let's get back to some of that get that old thing back when it comes to that old SEC ground and pound.
No, but it's a great point about the receiving aspect as well, because that is a big time part of these spread offenses. I'm trying to find the stats, even with Mississippi State last year, I'm trying to see what the total was. You're talking about Jaquavius Marks, who had 60 catches. He's a running back. Kylan Hill had some huge receiving numbers earlier in the year. You think about a guy like Malik Davis at Florida, Ben, who's kind of a hybrid running back wide receiver. He had 31 catches last year. Tyler Batty, a backup running back behind Larry Roundtree at Missouri last year, he had 28 catches. Aeneas Smith at Texas A&M, you're talking about a guy that had 43 catches. It is kind of a hybrid running back receiver. So that is a big time part when you think of these spread offenses. Yes, you're throwing it, but that doesn't mean the running backs aren't involved. And when you talk about these swing passes, these screens, I mean, that's basically a running play, right, Ben?
It is a running back. It's an extension of the running game. And that's what makes any offense better. When you got a running back that just you don't just hand the ball off to him. The first thing a player can run to a coach and say, Coach, I can catch that thing too. How can you catch it? Do the screen game? Can you get? But what's dangerous is when they have to really run the routes. Go back to LaDainian Tomlinson running that choice route. That's basically him and the linebacker in open space. Touchdown. I'm telling you, they telling these running backs, hey, man, don't be a one-trick pony. We know you can run the rock. Can you catch the rock? Like, yeah, coach, because I want to stay on the field. I'd rather them be cheering for me than be cheering for them. And that's no offense to any football player. It's much easier to play when you're the one doing it.
Yeah, it's a quick look at some SEC running backs coming up here in 2021. We'll come back. We'll let Ben recap the weekend that was. Also, Gaurav Vidak set to join us coming up here in about 20 minutes. We'll talk some Braves baseball with him. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can join us here on 3 and Out, and of course, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben here with you, coming off a just tremendous weekend where so much was happening. Hawks take game 1 there in Philadelphia. Also, the Braves take 2 or 3 from the Dodgers. The Falcons have traded Julio Jones now to the Tennessee Titans. So we do this on Mondays. We let Ben wrap up the weekend by asking him 3 questions that correspond with the letters in his name, B-E-A-N. So we start there. Ben, the biggest win of the weekend.
It would be my Tennessee Titans. I know I don't usually say the word my Tennessee Titans, but at the end of the day,
whoa. No. Kevin told me in the show meeting you were going to say South Alabama baseball.
Let me help you understand something. Listen.
Well, I believe
Jealousy would get you nowhere with me. I know you want to talk about Tim Tebow playing tight end and Trevor Lawrence being the generational talent. No, we got that action figure to go along with the young action figure to go along with that beast with Freddy Krueger with 22 on the chest. It would be them Tennessee Titans. Shout out to Terry Fontenot. Shout out to Arthur Smith for doing the right thing, getting rid of that money. Mike Vrabel. I know you wasn't able to run the ball in the playoffs against them, against those pesky Ravens, but you don't got to run that thing because you can throw that thing. Number 11, number 8, Ryan Tannehill. Don't mess this up.
Biggest win of the weekend, South Alabama, 20-0.
My cable.
That was the elimination game too, wasn't it, DJ?
My cable went out.
It was actually 19-1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
19-1
is much better than 20-0.
It is. I'm just saying. I mean,
Hold on. Who just said on the chat UF really didn't want to be there? Was that Cody?
It was.
Yeah, we good. Yeah. I mean,
they were done. They didn't want to be there anymore. It's just, it's just one of those times, you just didn't really want to be there.
Yeah, they was eating sour cream donuts with real sour cream on them. Their stomach was hurting.
Anyways, I think that was like the second worst defeat of the college baseball week.
Hey, stick to the script. You're getting off.
I was providing flavor to BJ's part of it. I think someone did get beat like 22-0 in one of the elimination games. It wasn't Florida, Ben, so
it ain't much different.
It's all right. All right, move along to E. Give us your expert breakdown of Julio Jones' impact on Atlanta.
Oh, man. Number one, I mean, when you talk about to know he was that recognizable of a player and he didn't play the quarterback position, he had developed a one-name superstar recognition, which is hard to do. That's Julio. His real name is Quintorris, by the way. And listen, QBR, when you look at Matty Ice's QBR when he's on the field compared to not being on the field, it goes from in the 80s to down in the 50s. And if they just audible out of the pass to a run, not only do they win the Super Bowl, I think that Julio Jones is your Super Bowl MVP.
And I have said this a couple of times, BJ. If Atlanta doesn't end up doing what they did, I'm trying to say this as nice a way as possible to not, just pour more salt in the wound. If Atlanta holds on and wins that Super Bowl, I think Julio Jones has one of the great catches in Super Bowl history. Now, was it as good as the Dwight Clark back of the end zone? No, okay, maybe not. But if you remember, a couple of plays before that drive ended, he caught a toe tapper there on the sideline that they actually had to review, and he got both toes in right there up there, Cody showing it. I mean, might that have gone down as one of the all-time catches in Super Bowl history? I think it was third down. They need to extend the drive. Might that have been one of the best ones we've seen in the Super Bowl?
Well, it should be remembered as that, yes. And I know because, we only kind of focus, there's a clip of it on the screen, but, you focus on the winning team. I know everybody, and rightfully so. We'll talk about Julian Edelman's catch where he kind of levitated or whatever. But, Julio Jones, you're talking about just a magical display of ability, of instinct. So yes, I mean the signature moments, the catches, the games, had a 300-yarder afternoon against Carolina. So just an absolute icon. Yes.
Yeah, 200-yarder in the playoffs. But I think that one is one that if Atlanta wins that Super Bowl, that catch that you see right there might be one of the best ones you've seen in the postseason, much less the Super Bowl. I mean, there's a few exceptions, obviously, because that wouldn't have been the game winner or clincher, but given time and distance, I believe that was extending the drive, and people were like, oh, he got the catch. Now all they need to do is run the ball, and the game could be over. So I mean, that was one of those that I think doesn't get as much hype as it probably should because the Falcons ended up losing the game, and well, nobody remembers what the losing team did in the Super Bowl by and large. Moving along to Ben, nobody should have spent money on the Mayweather-Paul fight. True or false?
I say nobody should have spent money on it for the simple fact that it was going to be on YouTube probably like 2 minutes after the fight. But it just shows why. The greatest bank robber in American history was not a crook. Never got a summons, never went to jail. It is Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather got paid whatever he got, but they say it's up to $100 million to fight a guy that doesn't even fight. To fight a guy that's only popular because of YouTube, because of social media. So somebody goes, Floyd Mayweather is 44. Logan Paul is 26. Logan Paul called out Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather said, BJ, no judges. Knockdowns do count. There are no winners or losers. And I get to make $100 million. I want to be listen. I mean, I thought I wanted to be a Toys R Us kid. No, I want to be Floyd Mayweather. He found a way to get paid more money to fight somebody who doesn't even fight. So, BJ, I know you got your take on it, but yes, I wouldn't have paid my money for it. But if you did, well, you must got that Kevin Thomas cheese. Money's so tall, everybody gonna fall.
Well, my take on it is I had to get y'all to explain to me what was going on because listen, I didn't quite understand the how this all happened. But yeah, look, man, and what people are mad, I guess, because they didn't see a traditional competitive fight. Is that what the expectation was? I mean, wasn't it supposed to be kind of a forced show? Between 50 and 100 million guaranteed. I mean, listen, it's a show, it's entertainment, right? Isn't that kind of by design what it was supposed to be?
It was entertaining. No, it was entertaining. It's just the fact that we know what it is, right, as the viewing public, and we still got to get all into it. You had Chad Ochocinco on the undercard. Now that was entertaining for like 3 rounds in like 1 minute because it was 4 2-minute rounds, and you know how it is. Chad start jumping around. Really,
I mean, you're a boxing guy. I know you're a fan of boxing. I mean, did Chad look natural out there?
He did look natural, but this is the thing. What's that word we be talking about? Athletic arrogance, right, BJ? He started looking good and forgot that he's boxing a boxer. And the thing about it, boxing is the number one rule is protect yourself at all times. He stuck his hands down like, hey, I'm doing it. And next thing you know, he caught that right. And then he was up off the ground. Listen, I give Chad a lot of credit for taking that fight. Just like Logan, if Logan Paul made millions of dollars yesterday fighting Floyd Mayweather, but Floyd Mayweather is the man, BJ. Floyd said, I don't care if you entertain or not. I'm guaranteed 50 to fight a YouTuber.
I got the numbers that just came in. Logan Paul just made $13 million. $30 million, and Money Mayweather is now quoted to be over $100 million for this fight. So, I mean, Logan Paul made some good money, but man, money. Oh, Mayweather.
You pay me $100 million. If I'm a professional boxer and you're going to pay me $100 million to fight a guy who doesn't fight? Yeah, who's not.
Well, he is a boxer. He's not a professional boxer.
Is he?
Well, this is the thing. This is what happens. This is what happens. Nate Robinson got meleeed.
And you have done it before. It doesn't mean you are, right? I mean,
no. What I'm saying is he's a guy that stays in shape. No, he's the guy that stays in shape that has a trainer. But what I'm saying is, Floyd Mayweather got $100 million to fight Pacquiao. Floyd Mayweather might have made $100 million to fight Conor McGregor, who's an MMA star. Now, so Floyd Mayweather went real fighter, MMA fighter, social media influencer / YouTuber. Floyd Mayweather Floyd Mayweather went to the school of capitalism and blew it up. I don't need this nonsense. This stuff don't work for me. I get $100 million to fight a dude, and I get to make the rules. You're not allowed to hit me hard. You're not allowed to hit me often, and you're not allowed to knock me out. And I get 100, and I get more than you, and I'm 44. And Floyd Mayweather had a fake beard. He had a fake beard on. This right here is not his. He did a you know what I'm saying, a Chia Pet beard, and he went out there on national TV and got $100 million. I'm getting the fake beard. Shut up.
There is a video now out online when when Floyd hits him with our right hook, and it kind of like apparently it knocks him out, and
Well,
Floyd
he knocked out. He held him up.
and keeps him on his feet because he was dragging it, and then helped him up to keep on fighting. So Floyd was like, "Hey, you ain't going down, big
Yeah,
dog.
we got to make this look good.
We making this cheddar. You gonna get up on your feet."
Floyd Mayweather like 5'8", Logan Paul like 6'2". Like he outweighed Floyd Mayweather like by like 40-something pounds, right? And Floyd caught him with that chin, and them hands went down. Floyd gave him a hug like I was his son. Boy, you all right? I can't see nothing. I know you can't. Because BJ, I know you don't know this, but people go, how do you get knocked out? If I hit you in your chin hard enough, your knees go out. You can't even stand up. Your knees, your chin tell your knees we out of there. And because people go, why the chin? The chin is the one bone that is very, very hard to break. You know, he got a broken chin. No, he got a glass chin, and he just got shattered by a 5'8", 155-pound 44-year-old with a fake beard that just made $100 million. Floyd Mayweather, you the man, man. You the man.
There's a special kind of talent it takes to earn that money for a non-event kind of, at the end of the day. Hey, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. It was an event there at Truist Park. 2 out of 3 the Braves took from the Dodgers. Gaurav Vidak will join us from Talking Chop when we return all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Braves and Dodgers, big weekend series. Braves took 2 out of 3, beating Kershaw and Trevor Bauer over the weekend, getting ready for a big series in Philadelphia coming up Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Joining us here from Talking Chop, Gaurav Vaidek, joining us here on 3 and Out. Gaurav, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, appreciate you coming on and joining us. You look at the way the season has played out. How huge of a momentum boost do you think this could be for the Braves to come out of a weekend saying, look, we beat Bauer, beat Kershaw, coming into a big NL East series versus the Phillies?
Those are exactly what you said. Those are some huge wins for the Braves, specifically for the bullpen, who was really able to show out over the last couple of days, really gain some confidence. Hopefully they're able to turn things around and really pick it up here soon.
What do you think the difference was for the bullpen? I believe, on a Saturday especially, they went 4 innings against LA, gave up 1 hit. How do you kind of quantify success like that when for much of this season that simply has not been the case?
I really wish I had a great answer to that, but this is the kind of production those guys should have had. Matzek was out there. He had he only faced 1 hitter, but got him out. Chris Martin had a couple of great appearances. Will Smith struck out those 3 on Saturday, right? So these are always the players, these are the players, we know what they are capable of, and it really depends on how you shuffle them and how you get them to get their work in. I love how they used Edgar Santana on Friday, and he showed out. The rest of the bullpen was really, really rough. Newcomb giving up those 3 runs with 3 walks, Grant Dayton also walking 2, but then Edgar Santana, one of the minor league free agent transactions, came in and struck out 2 and worked a perfect 2 innings. So hopefully he's gaining some confidence, because I still think he can be a major key. But really, it's the guys that really showed out, that were there last year. They really performed extremely well, just getting that work in. Matzek, turning him around and getting him where he was in 2020 is a huge priority as well. So really, it's just those are the guys that you lean on. Snicker did a great job. He leaned on the heavy arms to get him to get the Braves through the series. And like you said, they were able to get 2 out of 3.
This Braves team usually plays well, against better competition. I'm not, and I think you kind of saw that this weekend with the Dodgers. But when it comes to this bullpen, no matter what's done, right, wrong, and difference is going to come down to how well those guys play in those late innings. Do you see those guys kind of building off this momentum against the Dodgers to kind of get more consistent with these big series coming up?
I really do. I really do think, especially the guys that pitched this last weekend, great confidence boost, because that Dodgers lineup is incredible. So being able to do what they did, especially on Saturday, that's a huge momentum boost for them. So hopefully, again, they're able to keep that ahead in their heads, how well they pitch. They're able to carry it on, and maybe it wears on those other guys. Even Luke Jackson was fantastic, and he's been really good the past couple of appearances. And then there's still a number of minor league guys that are performing extremely well, that if opportunity knocks, it looks like they're going to be getting a chance pretty soon.
Gaurav, you look at this series coming up with the Phillies. Tucker Davidson going to get another shot on the starting rotation. The way he's pitched in his 2 spot starts, has he earned a chance to stay until he proves otherwise?
100%. That 5th spot should 100% be him. We've shuffled between Bryce Wilson, Kyle Wright, all of those kind of arms. Tucker's performed well. He's pitched extremely well this year. He's keeping his walks down. That's his spot. I have full confidence. He's been really incredible, even down in Gwinnett this year. So as far as I'm concerned, that 4 or 5 spot's his for probably the rest of the season, unless he starts to waver.
And with Davidson, Gaurav, you're talking about a guy whose ERA is 2.31, and very impressive. The work rate that he's been able to have with the Atlanta Braves. What's been the biggest key to his success?
Limiting walks. He's had the arsenal for probably a few years now, 2-3 years now. He's been trying to prove himself in the minors, but he's always had these bigger names in front of him. He's shown that consistency and hard work. He would spend the off season even over at Driveline with those people and working on his body, working on his mechanics, and it's shown. He came in a couple of years ago pumping high 90s out of nowhere, and he's been able to keep that up. And you can tell he's got the drive in him. He wants to be great. He's got 3 to 4 solid pitches, 2 really good ones. For him, it's confidence, it's consistency, and right now he's on it in every single level. And while he may not profile as, want a top 3 type of starting pitcher, these are amazing innings you're getting out of him right now. And you gotta lean on him as much as you can.
Obviously, when it comes to, pro sports, it's have what you do, have, what you can handle. When you think about this Braves team as a whole at this current juncture in the season, with everything they had to deal with from Mike Soroka to Marcel to, all these different factors, what grade would you give them up to this point?
Well, I honestly, I'd have to give them a C or a D. This roster is too talented for how they're performing. The last series was great, but overall in the season, we've got a -3 run differential. These guys are better than that, and they know it too. There's still plenty of room of improvement. You still have people like Albies, Acuna, Freeman. These are some amazing bats. They've had some turbulence, again, you mentioned Ozuna, and now he's no longer in the picture, but the likes of Adrianza, Guillermo Heredia, all those guys are performing well. And while you can't necessarily expect that kind of production over the rest of the season, they are performing extremely well. But all in all, you expect the Braves to be better than this. We're hoping that the last couple of days is kind of a blueprint for their success for the rest of the year. But as of right now, I'd have to probably give them, a C- to a D+.
Gaurav, are they better than that, though? I mean, I know what you look at the injuries they've had in the starting rotation, injuries they've had on the roster, not having Travis d'Arnaud. I mean, is this, I won't say they're overachieving, but are they kind of where they should be given the fact that the roster has been so inconsistent from day one, given all the injuries they've had pretty much since the jump?
Personally, I think so, and that's mainly because the NL East is just really bad this year. All things considered, you look at the rosters on every single team, and the Braves do have more talent. Maybe not, they're not performing like they did last year, and that was obviously like an A+ type of scenario. But the core is still there. You expect them to be able to run away with the NL East with how everyone's performing right now. The -3 run differential for this kind of offense is it's not expected, and you kind of expect the offense to even take up another tick. It looks like Charlie Morton's starting to get getting his feet underneath him as well. The biggest question mark I would have to say was Drew Smyly. What are you going to do with that spot? Seems like he's not getting through the lineup 3 times, so you have to really consider how you're going to manage those types of games. But with those 4 plus Tucker Davidson performing as well he is, you kind of do expect them to be a lot better than this.
Freddie Freeman, of course, had an MVP season a year ago, one of the great players in the game, but is hitting just .229. What do you attribute that to? And do you expect, a bump in those numbers moving forward?
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's Freddie Freeman. He's performed at a high level for quite some time. If you look at one specific advanced stat, it's called batting average in balls in play, BABIP. He's at .227. League average is .300. So he's getting unlucky on the field at a very, very high level. And he's still performing. He's still an above average player despite that really bad luck. As long as you look at all the other advanced stats with him and his batted ball profile, and he's getting just insanely unlucky. And you expect over the course of a 162 game season that those numbers will normalize. So hopefully we'll see Freeman really go on a tear here and kind of get all those numbers back up to what we expect out of Freddie.
And obviously, if this Braves team can continue this momentum and not let this Mets team get too far ahead of them, I mean, what is it going to take for them to go, 4 for 4 and win this NL East again? Because I don't think these guys are going to be vying for a wild card spot.
No, yeah, there's no way. There's too much talent over in the NL West that's playing at a very, very elite level. You got to take advantage. You got to take advantage of everyone in the NL East playing poorly. Really, the only thing that you can count on in the NL East is Jacob deGrom pitching amazingly. Outside of that, every game is a toss-up. So you got to take advantage of that. I think that the Mets in particular, against teams that are better than 500, they're 4-12. So it's not like they're beating up elite talent. They're beating up the talent in the NL East. And so as long as the Braves can take care, use the blueprint from the past 2 games where in these kind of really, really high stress games, you lean on those really big arms like a Chris Martin, and continue to hopefully have everyone round to form. Albies is really starting to get hot. Swanson is hitting a lot better now. And then Freeman getting that better luck. I still think the Braves have a great shot at taking the NL East. But like you said, there's too much talent over in the NL West and the NL Central for the Braves to really compete for a wild card. So you just got to take advantage of the poor play in your division and go for the throat.
Gaurav Vidak joining us here on 3 and Out from Talking Chop. Gaurav, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Appreciate it. And check him out there at Talking Chop as the Braves off tonight. 3-gamer against the Phillies coming up here midweek. And we will see Tucker Davidson making one of those starts here in Philadelphia, getting another shot there for the Braves in that rotation. I think he's earned it, and probably your 5th starter until proven otherwise.
Yeah, he's been really good. And you don't necessarily expect that 2.31 ERA to maintain itself. There are going to be some ups and downs, but he's confident. He's throwing strikes, as Gaurav said. I think he definitely deserves to be up here. I mean, Kevin, I'll ask you what he kind of asked. What do you do with Drew Smyly? If you're going to win a division, it's hard to do that. Just being honest with a guy that's going out there once every 5th day with an ERA near 6. I think he's at 5.98 might be the latest numbers. And look, he's had some good starts. But he's had some really poor starts. I mean, is there a way to absorb an ERA being that high from one of your starters?
Sure. Score runs. That's pretty much it. I mean, either he gets better or you score runs for him. And we've seen that from time to time where sometimes a team will take on that mold of, hey, pitcher X is pitching. He tends to give it up a little bit. We're going to have to be on our game offensively. Or, back in the day, the Braves in those 90s teams had the opposite problem, where it's like, hey, we got Maddox, Glavine, and Spoltz and Avery. We might be able to give up 2. Or we just need to score 2, and that's enough. So we'll see. I think the offense, if they can pick it up, should be able to score some more runs. But, yeah, Drew Smyly's got to take at least a step the other direction, coming back towards that low 5, high 4 mark if he's going to stick the remainder of the season. So big one with the Phillies coming up. You'd like to see him go take care of some business there in a couple of those games, win the series, and move forward and carry that Dodgers momentum into this next series. We've got more to get to here on 3 and Out, including some things just go from bad to worse, depending on your perspective. We'll get to that when we come back. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Monday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben. You know, some things just go from bad to worse. I said, depending on your perspective. And if you're an SEC fan, Nick Saban just re-upped for 3 more years with Alabama. Now his contract goes through 2029. So you wonder how long the evil empire's reign will be. Well, at least 3 more years, apparently, if you're in Alabama with Nick Saban.
Well, and that means 3 more college football playoff appearances and probably at least one national title, if not a couple more. I mean, it's amazing. And Ben, you've talked about this. How do you know you're an all-time great when we're no longer impressed by what you do? It's like we don't even celebrate the fact that Alabama is going to make the playoff or that they're going to, they're the clear favorite to win the SEC or whatever. We just expect it. And when you go from celebrating and talking about somebody's success to kind of just saying, oh, yeah, they're there, that's how you know you're one of the best to ever do it, because you take it for granted. And Nick Saban and Alabama, I mean, every year it's a number 1 recruiting class. It's an SEC championship game appearance. It's a spot in the playoff. It's right there for the national title. It's 5-6 guys, going in the first round. It's one of your coordinators is going to be a head coach every year. And the status quo remains the same. So he's the GOAT. I mean, he's absolutely the GOAT.
It's language in the contract is everything, right? So Nick Saban's contract probably says this: if it's any of the top tier coaches, and they renegotiate their deal, I get to renegotiate my deal. So you talk about Lincoln Riley, you talk about Coach Day, you talk about Harbaugh, you talk about Sweeney. If they are in the top 10 right now with coaching salary wise, and they get a new deal, it's like he just hit an incentive. Over the weekend, Mrs. Saban said, you saw that Dan Mullen got an extension. Like, how much of an extension? 1.5 mil. You sure it was 1.5 mil? Yeah. Well, here it comes. And I just think, BJ, doesn't Nick Saban just look like nothing? Like you said, I mean, nothing is impressive to him anymore. He's done it all, but he wants it all. I mean, BJ, I don't know if Wall Street is still your favorite movie. Now, how much money is enough money? More, because that's what he wants. At the end, and he's gonna get it. I'm not mad at him. Nick Saban Jr., if you out there, don't coach football because you don't want to get compared to your daddy. Just, collect on your trust fund money when you hit a certain age and holler at your boy, holler at your boy. It's Troop and Thomas Legal Services, so we'll make sure you keep your money in the bank.
But Kevin, you said this though with Saban, man. I mean, it literally doesn't matter who they lose. Your offensive coordinator, okay. Your defensive coordinator, okay. You lose your quarterback, all right. 5 first-round picks, 10 first-round picks. I mean, Alabama's going to be preseason top 3 if Nick Saban's there. It almost doesn't matter who's coming back.
Yeah, and again, I think if you're an SEC fan, you're going, what is it going to take? Because everybody's like, oh, we just need to recruit better. Well, I'm sorry. I enjoy recruiting rankings as much as the next guy, but if you're the number 1 class and they're the number 3 class, well, there's not much difference there. I mean, to me, there's just not. That's not closing the gap. If you see one there with Alabama, I mean, Georgia's been close a couple of times. Florida played them tight in the SEC championship game. But what's it going to take for somebody to kind of dethrone them? Not for 1 year, but we come into a season and say, yeah, no, it's finally not Alabama. It's somebody else. That's the team to beat in the SEC.
I mean, I think it's retirement for Nick Saban. I mean, he's probably seriously. I mean, he's probably the greatest coach of all time. And I know, a couple of years back, it was, we're comparing him to Bear Bryant. And look, the wins are there every year. The championship contention is there every year. Ben, didn't you say that every single player who's stayed for 4 years, who's been recruited for Alabama and has stayed through their eligibility has won a national championship? He also, let's not forget, has a national championship at LSU. So to sit here and say, and I know Georgia fans have asked this question, but to say, what do we need to do as a program to be better than Alabama? I don't know how to answer that. I don't. And I know that's not a good answer on a radio show, but Ben, I mean, how do you – if you're Georgia, if you're Florida, if you're LSU, how do you consistently be better than Alabama while Nick Saban is there?
I mean, in simple terms, yeah, you got to outdo him in everything he does, right? Now, think about that. I'm not saying it can't be done. We just never seen it. Like Dabo is understanding. we got to recruit better than them. And when we play them, we got to outplay them, right? I give you a scenario. You talk about Johnny Manziel, right? His time at Texas A&M, BJ, right? They outplayed them. They're not going to play them in no SEC championship. They only get one shot a year to do it. So when they talk to Johnny Manziel, they asked him two things. No, they asked him three things. You Johnny Manziel? Yep. Johnny Manziel that won the Heisman? Yep. Johnny Manziel that beat Nick Saban? Yep. Because that's what it is, right? Big in Alabama, you beat Nick. So you got to outdo him. I mean, and I'm going to say this. May he rest in peace. When Nick Saban brings in speakers, I want to go speak at that. I said, I'm going to speak at Alabama. I said, man, who they got coming to speak? They got Kobe. I just went like this. Oh, they got Kobe coming in? Oh, okay. When he coming. So I'm just saying, BJ, that's the type of juice you got to deal with when you're dealing with a guy like Nick Saban.
And he is re-up for a 3-year extension through 2029. So it may not be this decade consistently before anybody gets a hold of Alabama and takes control of the SEC. We've got so much more to get to in the final hour. It's 3 and Out on this Monday afternoon all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com.
Said that you oppose scrapping the filibuster. The question I have is whether or not, and you say you hope that that'll bring the parties together. The question I have is whether or not you're doing it exactly the wrong way. And hear me out on this. If you were to keep the idea that maybe you would vote to kill the filibuster, wouldn't that give Republicans an incentive to actually negotiate? Because old Joe Manchin's out there, who knows what he's going to do by taking it off the table. Haven't you empowered Republicans to be obstructionists?
Final hour of 3 and Out here on this Monday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us all across the radio network. Also streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, and live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can catch us each and every afternoon as well. Had a busy hour number 2, so we moved Take 3 back to now. So let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, take 1, fellas. Has a Hawks player ever had a better playoff run than what we're seeing currently from Trae Young?
I don't think so. When you look at, the entire totality of the series in New York, the game winner, the first player ever to go 30-10 in 3 straight games in the Garden to close out the series up there, and then have 35-10 against Philadelphia, the number 1 or one of the top seeds in the East here. It's been remarkable, and he has been the catalyst for a team that has already exceeded expectations. He's doing it every night. There hasn't been an off night. He's been better defensively, but offensively, he's been unparalleled in terms of his production. And it's not just his own scoring, but getting other guys involved as well. And keep in mind, this thing's still ongoing. Could you see Atlanta win this series? I mean, at this point, they're up 1-0. So I think no. I think what you've seen is the best stretch ever for the organization, at least in the modern era.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, BJ and Kevin, it's not being talked about enough. Is you already there used to be a time to where a guy had a chance to go out there and develop in the playoffs and kind of like have a earn his role. You already know who Trae Young is. Coming into this season, coming into these series, and he knows that if he doesn't play well, kind of similar to Matty Ice, right? If you don't play well, the team don't got a shot. 35 points, 10 dimes, and at the end of the game, he's holding the ball, telling his team to calm down, as if to say this isn't his first, hurrah in these playoffs. So yes, it is the best, and dare I say, Kevin and BJ, we talking about something historic. We get so caught up in the guys not named Atlanta Hawks, not named Trae Youngs of the world. He's having about as good as a postseason as you would like, and different than the guy he was compared to, BJ, Steph. He's outplaying Steph in the playoffs right now. Steph is more of a regular season guy, not as good in the playoffs. So yeah, falls like Atlanta Hawks, take nothing away from Dominique, because Dominique is always the name you're gonna pop in your head. I would definitely say Trick or Trae.
Yeah, I was gonna say I went and looked back, and one, let's be real, the Hawks haven't had a lot of playoff success as a franchise, period. So you go back and look at the mid-teens Paul Millsap runs with the Hawks. I think he had 45 in one game, a couple of games in the high 20s, but nothing like the consistently 30s with the assists and lack of turnovers that Trae Young has. You have to go way back and check out, some of Dominique's games, but even that, I don't think is matching what we're seeing through a round and a game so far out of Trae Young. I think every game he goes out and does that, BJ and Ben, just kind of solidifies maybe more so that this might be the peak single-player performance for a Hawks playoff run that we have seen. Take 2, does the Julio Jones addition make the Tennessee Titans a contender?
I struggle to answer this because I struggle to define it. And I know you won't like that, Kevin, but if like what are we asking? Are the Titans now one of the leading contenders to win the Super Bowl? If that's the question, I would say no. I think Tennessee is going to be a lot better. I know you're excited, Ben, and for good reason. You should be. You just got one of the best players in the league. But if I'm being honest, and as much as I love Julio and I'm still excited to watch him play, if I'm asking myself the question, do I think Tennessee is better than Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo? I would say no. And that's how I would, I guess, define the question. Do I think they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the conference? And if that's the question, I would say no. Kansas City is Kansas City. Baltimore, wow. Playmakers everywhere. And in Buffalo, I think what they showed last year, Ben, for me, I would still put Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo ahead of Tennessee in the AFC, maybe even Cleveland. And if I'm doing that, I would have Tennessee at best 5th in the AFC. I think they're probably the favorite in the South. So if that's the question, are they a contender to win the division? Yes, I would put them ahead of the Colts right now. I would. But I'm taking the question as, are they one of the front runners to make the Super Bowl out of the AFC? And for me, I would still put at least Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo, and maybe Cleveland ahead of Tennessee.
Is Tennessee Titans a contender with Julio Jones? The answer is yes. The Tennessee Titans put out the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs 2 years ago to then lose to the Baltimore Ravens this year. The Tennessee Titans were the team that the Kansas City Chiefs had to beat to then go on to win the Super Bowl, a year before that. You telling me by adding a top 3 receiver in Julio Jones when you can actually throw the football, when you still got Derrick Henry, if they're not a contender, then who is? If Julio Jones doesn't make the Tennessee Titans a contender, Cleveland have made the playoffs last year it's been a long time. The Tennessee Titans were making the playoffs without Julio. The Tennessee Titans have a 2,000-yard rusher without Julio. I say when you add Julio to that mix, most definitely they're a contender, and that's not taking nothing away from the teams in their division and in the AFC.
I think they are. Again, you give me Julio Jones, I can make the quarterback better, right? And you've got not just Julio, you've got 2 big weapons there, plus a Mack truck at running back that everybody has to pay attention to. I think they're going to be very, very dangerous there in the AFC this year. And I certainly wouldn't want to line up to them against them with my
No. Listen, I agree with everything y'all are saying. I guess what I'm asking is if y'all were doing a preseason power ranking in the AFC, and that's kind of how I took the question. Would you put Tennessee ahead of Baltimore, Kansas City, or Buffalo? Because I would not. That's all I'm saying.
I would not put them over Kansas City. I could put them over Buffalo, and I could put them over the Ravens because I've seen them beat both the Ravens and Buffalo. Because now it's BJ. You always say go position by position and see who's better. Obviously, Kansas City gonna have the better quarterback, right? Who got a better running back than Tennessee? Who got a better receiver core than Tennessee at this point? I'm just saying Ryan Tannehill is the one that's going to decide it. But if he can't get the ball to, I don't know what number Julio's going to wear because AJ Brown's wearing number 11. So whatever number Julio wears, if you can't get him to rock, you don't deserve to be the quarterback.
I would put him at 2 as well, BJ, behind Kansas City. I know that may not be but I mean they are loaded up. It's as Ben said, it all comes down to whether or not their quarterback holds up, not the pieces around them, because they are loaded there. Moving along, take 3. If you had to pick one fictional character to compare Nick Saban to, who would it be?
All right, I've been trying to think about this, and I haven't come up with a good answer. And I will admit, and maybe Cody can help us out here, because one of Cody or Christian, I can't remember who it is like a huge fan of this series. I was trying to think, all right, Nick Saban, championships, rings. What about somebody from Lord of the Rings? Now, I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings. All right, so Cody, I don't know if it's you or Christian or is it Kevin? It's like a super Lord of the Rings fan. Is there somebody that has a ton of rings in the Lord of the Rings?
It's Christian and myself. Yes, there's a guy who made all the rings and everything, but he's evil. Why do we always compare Nick Saban to something evil? I don't understand that.
I don't know. I don't know what happened in the Lord of the Rings. I don't know who has the championship rings or where they came from or what the purpose is. I'm asking, is there somebody? I'm not telling you, I'm asking you.
He gives them away to everybody to take control of them. They're like magical rings. So I don't know. So you're going to say you're going to compare him to something that you don't know about? I don't understand what's
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying, because Nick Saban has all the rings. There's a famous movie series called Lord of the Rings. So I didn't know if there was somebody who was like the ring leader who had all the rings.
Make the connection.
Hot take. Yeah, hot take.
Okay, fine.
Nick Saban is Batman. I mean, this is not even hard. Batman been out a long time. He's not even been the same person the whole time. Nick Saban has not been in Alabama the whole time, right? Nick Saban has shown his weaknesses. He was at Miami and showed he had a weakness. He even said, "What is your biggest threat?" Leaving LSU. Did anybody say anything to him? No. I mean, he was Michael Keaton and he was Christian Bale. I'm just saying, when you look at what the thing is, well, out of all the superheroes, the Superman, the Spider-Mans, Batman, he got different names. I mean, I'm just saying he's the Dark Knight. The Dark Knight rises. Turn on the lights with the darkness. Who cares? Nick Saban gonna always be even in the last Batman or whatever. Did Batman really die? Because I saw him blow up. No. Nick Saban will leave when he want to leave. Nick Saban has all the cheese. He probably got an underground lair that we don't know about. He might be running the world. We don't really know. And if we did find out, well, we out of here at that point, Kevin. If you walk in the wrong room, he goes, "Oh, hey, what are you guys doing in here?" Kevin, he's just gonna shake his head. So Nick Saban is Batman, the Dark Knight, whatever you want to call it. He walk in a cave full of bats, and while me and you run out, he just stand there and goes, "I'll take it. This costs 100. I'll take the cave." Nick Saban is the Dark Knight, and guess what? If he ever plays the Dark Knight in a real movie, Singularity has taken over. So yes, he's Batman.
With all that said, have you ever seen The Lord of the Rings, Ben?
I have seen The Lord of the Rings, BJ, and it is beautiful to watch. Make sure you have nothing to do though. I mean, one episode is like 6 hours. I mean, that's just one episode, one movie. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, not episode, one movie. But Lord of the Rings, I mean, Lord of the Rings, aka The Return of Berndorf. I'm just saying, I love it. I love it. Sorry.
I was there with you, Ben, kind of close to Batman, but no, Nick Saban is Tony Stark. He's Iron Man. He is no, listen, and this is why. One, he's got all the money. He got the money, all the resources he could need to make things happen. That's Tony Stark. Tony Stark literally is like, I need to make an Iron Man suit. I'll just spend my own money and do it. That's Nick Saban. He's got 4,000 analysts hanging around, helping him out. Like Nick, Tony Stark's got Stark Industries, and just churn them out. Hey, you're fired. Fine, bring another one. It's fine. And he's got a lot of people that want to get like he's the head of the Avengers, but like all the bad characters, they want Iron Man first, right? There's like Captain America's out there, whatever. They want to get Tony Stark. They came and blew up his house to mess with him. And the only thing that'll make Nick Saban go away is a fistful of Infinity Stones. That's really it. I think he's Tony Stark and he's Iron Man. He's got all the money. He's got all the resources. Everybody hangs on every word he says. And the only thing that'll make him go away is the snap of Thanos' thumb and finger.
BJ,
that's it.
BJ, why are you looking confused? I don't understand.
No, I'm trying to figure out because I don't watch all these shows. I don't know all the shows like you do. Are the Infinity Stones in the show in the movies with the with the wizards? What was the wizard show y'all were watching?
What do you do when you
What
go
are
home?
you talking about?
Stare at the wall or something? Or do you just like
No,
No,
the show with the wizards. What's the show with the wizards?
No, the Avengers have nothing to do with any kind of wizards at all. Period. Zero.
Oh, you talking about Harry Potter?
Do any of them have rings? Like I thought I was onto something with the Lord of the Rings thing.
Well, yeah, you did, but you told us you talking about the Lord of the Rings and you don't know any of the characters.
What I'm asking is, does Iron Man and Batman don't have rings?
What's your favorite Care Bear?
No.
What's your favorite Care Bear?
Exactly. I think we should just leave it at that. We'll come back. We'll talk Julio Jones getting traded to the Tennessee Titans. D. Orlando Ledbetter. We'll hear from him when we return. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Out on this Monday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Of course, the big news of the day, Julio Jones gone from the Atlanta Falcons, traded to the Tennessee Titans. And joining us here on the program to talk all about that from the AJC.com, D. Orlando Ledbetter joins us. Daryl, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on 3 and Out again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hey, we are glad to have you. And obviously, we've talked to you several times about the possibility of this happening, and it was going to be a matter of time. In the end, was it all just, hey, the Falcons found the Titans were willing to take all the money on, and that was that?
Yeah, no question about it. They shopped it for 6 weeks, slow rolled it right before the draft just to kind of get their hands around what the marketplace was going to be like. And at the end of the day, it was time to make that move. They didn't want Julio's, immense figure hanging over the mandatory minicamp coming up this week. So they took the best offer they had on the table from the Tennessee Titans.
A lot of talk leading up to this that Atlanta was going to get a first-round pick. Was that ever close to being a possibility? I know they got a second-round pick and a fourth, and the money obviously moving to Tennessee, but were there internal expectations of a first-round pick?
Yeah, there were initially, but nobody ever offered one. So, there was one report by Diana Rossini that they had a first-round pick on the table, and that was never the case. So I don't know if they used her or somebody leaked her some information to try to create a market when there wasn't one there. So, not that kind of stuff happens, but it can. There was no big market for Julio. He's 32, got the big contract. That was a little bit stunning given what Stafford was able to get, what the Lions were able to get for Stafford. That was a quarterback, though. But, I was stunned when I found out what the marketplace was going to be like for Julio. I was second and third was what we were hearing from the beginning.
And dear Orlando, how much of that, you talk about them shopping him for 6 weeks. Obviously, they got to be able to report back to him, I'm guessing, when they reaching out to teams. But it had to be shocking to Julio because obviously the national narrative when it comes to Julio, top 2, maybe 3 or 4 receiver in the league, but 32 years old with a $15 million price tag in 2021 had to, make a lot of teams kind of walk away from the table.
Yeah, no question about it. Seattle and New England didn't want to pay that kind of money. It made sense for Tennessee because they were going to have to pay that for Corey Davis. And basically, they took Corey Davis's money, let him go, and said, we'll give that to Julio. A young Corey Davis is not as good as an old Julio Jones in their mind. So the money makes sense for them. It's got to make sense for you when you're doing that. San Francisco couldn't do it. The Rams tried, they talked to all the NFC West teams, but Tennessee came up with the second round and fourth round pick, and that was, the best deal that they can get for Julio Jones.
The Orlando Ledbetter joining us here on 3 and Out. And Daryl, I know you had said the new coaching staff, the new regime was kind of shocked at how much time Julio missed last year. Is that one of those things where could they have restructured if they wanted to keep him, or are they looking at like, hey, this is a guy that's aging, missed a lot of time just during the week last year and in recent seasons, and maybe we just need to go a new direction anyways?
Yeah, no, they could have done other things. This wasn't the only way to get under the cap. That was brought to my attention by people that knew how their books work. So it was they never came to a meeting of the minds. When you came in, you tried to meet with all the players. You try to share your vision and expectation. And Julio, having been here through the last 3 years, like, okay, that's probably not going to work. And so he decided that he wanted to go to a team with the chance to win now in his last couple of years. He's got to be looking at it like that. And, you got to remember, Julio was brought in under Roddy White. And he saw how Roddy White's situation ended with the team. And he probably wanted no parts of that.
So talk about Julio's legacy. I mean, obviously one of the greatest players in the history of the franchise, Daryl, but you've covered him as close as anybody. What did he mean to the organization?
Oh, he was, he pushed them over the top. You got to remember when he comes in, the Falcons had gotten to, the playoffs as the number 1 seed, got into a shootout with Green Bay and couldn't keep up, and so they had to rev up the offense. So they traded all the picks, got Julio, got right back into the playoffs, then got in a championship game his second year, got to the Super Bowl in his 6th year. Twice they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion, to the Giants, and then to the Eagles with Julio on the roster. And then, of course, we know what happened in the Super Bowl. So he made the Falcons championship contenders with all their other weapons that they had. And but for the offensive line failed rebuild, they'd still be probably in the playoff mix. But, the line failed. They can't block anybody right now, and they can't rush the passer, and Julio wants out. And so that's how it ended here for him. But during his tenure, the Falcons were in the mix. You got Tony Gonzalez, Roddy there early. They were pick your poison. Even Michael Turner's last year was with Julio. So then they move on and, get to the AFC Championship game. They got that lead. They're up 17 and can't close that game. So, some of the great Falcons, I think he balled out in the San Francisco game. Thought he had like 13 for 182. So, one of the great performers on a big stage in the big games and, legitimized the Falcons and pushed them over the top into, NFC title contenders.
And Orlando, when you look at the fact that a guy like Terry Fontenot, who obviously, you see what he did over there in New Orleans, a lot of times people think, why do you get the right general manager? People like, you got to get the right general manager to make hard decisions. I think you get a guy like Terry Fontenot to just make business decisions because he knew, look, we're not going to be able to keep Julio. I've seen it all, done it all. When you talk about what he's done, how much of having him in the front office make these type of decisions, not easy to make, but he can make them because he's almost seen it all in his a still very, a young career as a GM.
Yeah, no question about it. He's been at it for a long time, 19 years. That you hired to make some of these tough decisions. I'm coming in, I'm trying to keep all the good players I got. I'm not trying to be trading them. But, if folks don't want to be here, you going on TV talking stuff about the team, basically calling them losers, then, you really can't come back in that locker room without a full apology and so forth. So it was just a messy situation. They inherited, some of this started back, with the contract when Matt Ryan got his $150 million contract, and Julio keeps going back every year asking for more money. And, just follow the dollars on some of these things and you can get to what the root of the problem is.
Orlando Ledbetter joining us here. You mentioned minicamp coming up this week. What are the Falcons looking to get done there?
Well, this whole off season is dedicated to getting Kyle Pitts ready to go now. He's going to have to pick up some of the slack in the passing game. And Kyle's looked great at the OTAs and so forth. So they're just trying to learn their formations, learn their schemes, so when they can they can go to camp in July and hit the ground running. But, what we've been able to see through 4 practices, the 2 rookie mini camps and 2 open OTAs is he's learning. He's a reflective guy, kind of runs off to the side. You can see him trying to think through some of the things they're trying to do. And we've seen him doing a lot of stuff early. It was all simple outs and stuff like that. But then, lately we've seen a little bit of motion and some down the field stuff with him. So that's what this whole offseason is about, getting Kyle Pitts ready and, getting that offensive line in shape because you can't keep letting Matt Ryan get sacked 40 times, and hit 80 and hurried another 70-something times. So those are the 2 things that they got to do. And, we always been looking for the pass rush here. So that's ongoing. Decade-long search is still going on there. So those are the 3 priorities for them here in the mandatory minicamp.
A lot of talk about Kyle Pitts, and understandably, but with Calvin Ridley, has he already proven that he is a number 1 receiver after 1,300 yards last year, and is he ready to be, I guess, the go-to guy? We'll see what Pitts can do, but with Julio now gone.
Oh, certainly. I do believe Ridley's fine for that role. Last season showed that he could still get the numbers, even without Julio on being on the other side. So, it's going to be tougher, but I'm just working through that story now. Is hey, what does the offense look like without Julio? And that's mostly Kyle Pitts and Ridley engaged. And I'm not even figuring in the other tight ends yet. But behind those two, you don't really have much. You got the Tajay Sharp kid that's coming over from the Vikings. He had a 41 catch year in Tennessee, and then you got the Darby kid they drafted. But yeah, it's you don't just trade a 7-time Pro Bowler and replace it right away. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that shakes out.
And there, you mentioned how Julio was a guy that saw what happened to Roddy White at the end of his career. He wanted no part of that, but didn't Julio kind of do for really what Roddy White did for him? I mean, obviously Julio ended up replacing Roddy. Now, really is essentially replacing Julio as the number one. So when you look at both of those guys' legacy, both Roddy and Julio, even though they two are the greatest to ever do it, with the Falcons, both of those guys didn't mind passing the torch to the next man.
Well, yeah, no question about it. You could probably go back and thank Falcons wide receiver coach Terry Robisky for coaching Roddy and getting him straight, and then having Roddy share that information with Julio, and then Julio's done the exact same thing with Ridley. So football wise, they've passed the torch that way. But I was more speaking about Roddy getting cut while on vacation at the end of his career, and that didn't sit well with some of his teammates.
Orlando Ledbetter, our guest here on 3 and Out. Daryl, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Take care. Have a great evening.
Will do. Orlando Ledbetter joining us as Julio Jones off to the Tennessee Titans. Falcons get a second-round pick in 2022, a fourth-round pick in 2023, and send a sixth-rounder back to Tennessee, I believe in 2023 as well. Tennessee takes on the remainder of the Julio Jones contract, which includes, of course, the $15 million here in 2021.
And Ben, you made a point earlier in the show about draft value, and I know for some people we had been, getting accustomed to the idea of a first-round return. But even if you're talking about this second-round pick being in the 50 to 60 range, you're still talking about really highly touted prospects. I go back to the 2020 NFL draft. You had Trevon Diggs, Cam Akers, Jalen Hurts, AJ Epineza, J.K. Dobbins, Raekwon Davis, Van Jefferson. These guys were in the 50s. You go back to last year, you're talking about Azeez Ojulari, Sam Cosmi, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, you're talking about big-time players that are still on the board in that 50 to 60 range when you look at a traditional second round.
Well, the thing about this, BJ, there's nothing traditional about, think about this. You're talking about top 60 or top 90 picks. So think about every prospect coming out. These are NFL ready players. You was a top 60, top 90. I think that player is ready to become a starter or even compete for a starter. When I got drafted, the first thing Jeff Fisher told me is you need to be ready to compete for a starting job. He ain't saying I was gonna win it, but we looking at you as a potential starter. If you are a top 60, definitely maybe even a top 90 pick, you looking upon to be a starter. The best players in the NFL do not get drafted in the first round.
All right, we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Thanks again to Orlando Ledbetter. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out here on this Monday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. No Braves tonight. They'll be back tomorrow taking on the Phillies. Hawks off as well after a big Game 1 win over the 76ers. We'll get to more of that coming up as well. But obviously last week was big for college football. Dead period was over. Saw a lot of transfers take place. Certainly Georgia got 2 big ones coming in there as well. So we thought we'd do a little preseason college football power ranking. We're just going to give you our top 10. And we came up with a show kind of aggregate, BJ, of me, you, and Ben as to where our poll would be. So we each did our own individual ones, and we came up with like a combined poll. We have Alabama number 1, Clemson 2, Georgia 3, Oklahoma 4, and Ohio State at 5. I think all of us had those 5 teams in some semblance in our top 5. Cincinnati 6, Texas A&M 7, Iowa State 8, North Carolina 9, and Oregon 10. Kind of how we came up with our power rankings there. I think our top 5 is pretty much going to be very close to everybody else's. I think Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Ohio State are probably the top 5, and then there's everybody else behind them.
Yeah, and I said last week, I think you can make a strong case for Georgia to be the preseason number 1 team in the country, and I still stand by that. If you want to tell me Georgia's your preseason number 1, I'll nod, give you a thumbs up. I think the Dogs are one of the top teams in the country. For me, and I feel like the top 3 teams in college football kind of stand out above the rest. After thinking about it, I think it's very, very close, but I went Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Georgia 3. If you want to tell me Clemson's your number 1, okay, I'll hear that. If you want to tell me the Dogs are your number 1, okay, I'm good with that. I think in some form, Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia are the 3 favorites, and I would say those programs for me are ahead of Oklahoma, Ohio State, and then the rest of our top 10. And I would buy Georgia at number 1. I think it's a very slim margin. But I look at Alabama, it's not even so much for me, guys, who's returning, and the defense is going to be nasty. I mean, it's going to be incredible. You add in Henry To'o from Tennessee to go along with, Chris Allen and some of the DJ Dale and the guys that are LeBron Ray that are back, the secondary Malachi Moore. But it's just the Alabama standard. I mean, we know that Bryce Young is going to be great. We know that Brian Robinson is going to be great. We know that John Mechie is going to be great. You have another elite offensive line with Evan Neal back. So Alabama's Alabama. I mean, that's to sum it up why I have them 1. Clemson, you lose a couple of guys defensively, including Kendrick transferring to Georgia, but the talent is there. You know what Clemson has, and I think right now maybe a point or 2 separates Clemson and Georgia in terms of looking ahead to that opener. But, I mean, do you guys agree Alabama, Clemson, Georgia in some form? Or, Ben, did you have Georgia down a spot or 2?
Sorry, my fault. I had Georgia right below Ohio State at number 4. BJ, my thing is this. Just imagine, we in a certain part of the country, right? So Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia is what we're going to know a whole lot about. Well, in 25 games, you know how many regular season games Ohio State had lost under Coach Day? That will be 0. They have never lost since he's been the head coach. So I know because of where we are in the country, I get it. You pick Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, ain't nobody going to say a word. Well, who played in the national championship last year against Alabama? That would be Ohio State. So when you look at those 2 losses, one came against Clemson and one came against Alabama. Those are the 2 losses since Coach Day has been there. Georgia, to me, is number 4, and that's no slight. If you're in the top 5, so if you're Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, or Oklahoma, I'm sorry, it looked like this last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. It's going to look like that next year. My thing is, when you start talking about the top 10, can 6 through 10 break it to the top 5? Can Iowa State or Cincinnati or Texas A&M or UNC or Oregon break it to that top 5, BJ? Because the whole thing about it is, you look at what 2 transfers do for the University of Georgia, who didn't have a lot of holes, if any. The problem is Alabama don't got no holes. You said we know that Bryce Young is going to be good. Like, just throw away the quarterback. The defense is going to be nasty. Who's going to score on them? Clemson going to have arguably the best D-line in the country since, Cleveland Farrell and those guys left. The difference in the Alabama, Clemson, Ohio States of the world is they used to it. Georgia's been there. And I think they're good enough to get back there. But you don't think Ohio State expect to win, the Big Ten to move on? You don't think Clemson expecting to win the ACC and move on? You don't think Alabama knows it don't got to win the SEC to move on? I just think for me, it's going to come down to how well Spencer Rattler plays for Oklahoma and the JT Daniels ready for all the smoke coming out of Adams, BJ, because right now, as much hype as Georgia get, it's still even crazy because of those 2 transfers that they just got, and rightfully so. But we'll see what happens. That's why you play the game, because like I said, Nick Saban ain't worried. Nick Saban getting the contract extensions, ready to unleash Bryce Young to the world. Another Devonta Smith, who I don't think they're related, is on campus right now. They're going to have a big-time running back. I just think that if you can't beat Alabama and Clemson consistently, it's going to be much to do about nothing, because I just think that Oklahoma has the talent. Can they, Alabama, Clemson has 2 things that people don't want to admit. Well, really, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. 5-star players and a 5-star coach. They got both. Georgia has 5 stars. Oklahoma has 5 stars. But until you can beat the elite programs that meet the talent threshold, you're going to be in the top 5 every year. And people keep saying, if you keep knocking at that door, if it's reinforced with Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama, I want to see you kick that door down. But I do agree with you, BJ. If Georgia was ranked number 1, I wouldn't bat an eye about it. But I think Kirby Smart kind of have that Dan Mullen mentality in the sense he don't want his team getting any more pub than they are already getting, which is going to be hard for him to do when they doing what they're doing on the recruiting trail. But if any team got a chance to break up this elite at the top type of I think Iowa State got a chance to do it. I don't know if they will do it with BJ, but this is going to be as good of a chance as any this year.
Well, again, Iowa State, solid football team. Are they better than Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma? I mean, they're going to have to beat somebody to break that mold. I don't know that they can do that to get there. I just look at I think that the interesting team will be Cincinnati, depending on how they fare in the season, because, again, there'll be another team where the same kind of thing will be said about them, BJ. It's like, well, okay, you got there, but if we put you there, are you going to be able to do anything? Maybe that Georgia game put some thoughts in heads last year in the Peach Bowl, but I think, to me, it's Alabama. I had Alabama, Oklahoma, UGA, Clemson as my top 4, and I don't see any reason why they won't be the top 4 when the polls come out preseason. Ohio State will be right there. They got some of the best wide receivers in the country. So I think Alabama is the number 1 team to beat by far. Again, they lost a bunch to the NFL, but it's just guys waiting their turn, man. I was like, and I think we've seen it. No other school would you say, I mean, even LSU. Now, granted, it was 2020 and you had guys opt out, but even losing all those guys, they were not going to be the number 1 team in the country coming back in 2020. Alabama lost all those guys in the draft, and people are still like, it doesn't matter. They're still the number 1 team in the country, because it's guys who are very highly recruited, played a little bit of snaps, waiting their turn to go out and be the man. And I again, until somebody does it consistently, you got to put them, to me, no worse than 1 or 2 in every poll from here on out.
Sure. And I'm going to say this after those top teams. Keep an eye on Cincinnati now. People were questioning, should they have been top 10, top 5 even last year? And you know what we saw? We saw them go toe to toe with Georgia and had an injury, along the offensive line that maybe changed that game some. But at the very least, Cincinnati showed they were right there with Georgia a year ago. And you think about who's coming back for the Bearcats: Desmond Ridder, one of the top quarterbacks in the country; Myjai Sanders out of Camden County, one of the top pass rushers in all of college football, probably going to be a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. You look in that secondary, which was top 5 in the country last year. Ahmad Gardner's an All-American there in the defensive backfield. They play Notre Dame. And I know people like to say, well, a G5 team's not going to make the playoff. If Cincinnati goes undefeated, wins their conference championship game, and beats Notre Dame out of conference, you're telling me, I mean, based on what we've seen them do the last couple of years, they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. So, I'm going to ride for the G5. Cincinnati's going to be really good. I had Coastal Carolina 10th in my poll, and Louisiana not far behind. So I know we're going to talk about the same old teams, and then after that, Iowa State and A&M and North Carolina. But keep an eye on Cincinnati. The Bearcats are going to be one of the best teams in the country, and Coastal Carolina isn't going anywhere either.
I just think that we always go back to the notion of is it would you go Alabama or the field? And I think the field is everybody, and obviously, even Clemson, Ohio State are going, as part of those usual suspects, and obviously Oklahoma and Georgia meet the talent threshold, BJ. But watch out for Oregon. Because the thing is, when Kevin always talking about who's in that room, you know who hasn't got a check yet? That would be the Pac-12. They have not got a check when you talk about the college football playoff. And if anybody, BJ, can be party crashers, we met old Kayvon Thibodeau, 3 years now, back in Florida State when it was everybody else and it was Kayvon. But if you haven't had a chance to see the young man play, not only he is the premier pass rusher in the country, he also returned punts. I just think for somebody else to break it up, BJ, you and Kevin talk about Cincinnati. BJ, you obviously talk about Coastal Carolina. I want to know, can Coastal Carolina do it 2 years in a row? Because we talking about Coastal Louisiana. App State said, I think we pretty good. We play some pretty good football too. But for me, I think it's Oregon because, USC still got some really, really good players. I just think that Oregon is poised to be those party crashers.
And they'll be back at it less than 2 months when fall practice begins there as well, counting down the days each and every day to get us there. We've got more to come here on this Monday. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on this Monday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. If you missed any portion of the show, you can go to espncoastal.com. Also, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our YouTube page. You can go there as well, get a podcasted version of the show each and every day. We had a Floyd Mayweather-Logan Paul fight last night, Ben. I know you're a big fight guy. Cody said he watched it for what it was. But basically, did we just see two guys, grift millions off everybody who was trying to watch this thing?
Well, of course we did. I mean, at the end of the day, they show you, if they give you the code to the bank, you open up the vault and you just get what's in there. We saw a money grab last night. We saw one guy who's 50-0 who made his career as a boxer and another guy who made his career as a social media influencer. The two worlds collided last night, and dare I say, both of them walked away with millions. I mean, Logan Paul got knocked out, but I mean, Floyd Mayweather held him up like he was his son graduating from high school. Like it wasn't much to watch, BJ, but at the end of the day, if you can make $50 million guaranteed to fight a dude that ain't even a fighter, and you get to fight it, and you're a social media influencer, I'm trying to tell you, BJ, capitalism has changed, man. It ain't what it used to be. Some of us got to get the old-fashioned way, and some of us, well, we can get people to pay $50 a pop to watch us go out there and hug each other for 5 rounds.
I mean, look, I just followed it on social media, but yeah, I kind of thought that it was what we knew it was going to be, right? A couple of guys getting out there and getting paid at the end of the day.
Yeah, just go out there, make it look good, and we'll collect. And dare I say, set up a rematch. We'll see you tomorrow. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.